Now I've got an interesting pattern for you today. It's a variant of one I've tied on the channel before, but it's a pretty cool pattern. It can be tied in various styles for multiple species, and I think you'll like it. Hello everybody, welcome to Savage Flies. I'm Matt, thanks for stopping by. So earlier today I was flipping through Taff Price's 1986 Fly Tying and International Guide, and I came across another pattern called the Burlap. Now Price does mention that this is a pretty popular steelhead fly in the Pacific Northwest, but I'm going to tie it as a trout streamer today. Now the coolest thing about this fly is it uses a unique material for the body. It's either a burlap, and what is burlap? It's just a woven material out of jute twine. So what is jute, you might be asking? Well, it's a natural, very coarse fiber. Now, after I tied the last batch of burlap flies sometime last year, I went to Amazon and looked for some jute twine, and I found this, a 15-pack of 2mm spools of twine. And, you know, the natural and then the brown, and then dyed all kinds of other crazy colors that you may or may not ever use as a fly tire. But it's some pretty cool material. You can make some cool nymph bodies out of it, or a streamer body as you're about to see today. So if you're looking for unique materials to tie flies out of, consider getting some of this jute twine. It's pretty cool stuff. So today's fly, pretty simple pattern. I'm going to tie it in an olive variant and use it here on the East Coast for, you know, some of the big browns this winter. So there's one in the vise, an olive burlap. Now if you're tying this as a steelhead fly, obviously use a steelhead hook and the sizes you typically tie them. But I'm going to make this a trout streamer. So I'm tying it in a little bit smaller. This is a size 8 streamer hook, 3x long. Let's go ahead and pinch that barb. And I'm going to put some weight. Not a whole lot, but I'll put a length of 0.15, pretty much the length of the shank. Okay, I think that'll work. And I'm going to use some black thread here. I'm going to stick with 70 denier, but you could go thicker if you want. Just put a dam behind it, take a few wraps up over it, another dam in the front, and then take the thread back to the start of the bend. Before we get too far, let's break our thread real quick. And if that happens on you, just pull it tight, rethread your bobbin, put a few more wraps right here. And why that happened on me, I wasn't pulling it too tight, but this thread right here is getting a little bit tangled up on the spool. So when I tried to pull out some extra, it just snapped on me, and that happens. Now I'll just have 2 tags to cut off here. Now for the tail, just calls for brown bucktail. So I've got a natural piece right here. I'm going to take some of the fibers, hairs from the center of it, put it in my stacker, and if it doesn't stack perfectly, I wouldn't worry too much about it. But what do we have here? Let's see. That's a good 20 or so fibers, hairs, and it's kind of long, so I'm going to go to about right there. Not a length of the body, but well longer than a hook bend. So let's just catch this in right here, and I'm going to use some of this tail right here to help smooth out this gap behind the weight. So just some loose wraps right here going up, and you don't have to get too carried away about this because we do have some burlap that can also help fill in this gap. Now this burlap, here's a piece of it, you know, just jute twine. This one is a dyed brown. That is going to be too thick. So this is a 3-strand. You'll just want to untwist it. Take one of the strands right here, and I'm going to go ahead and snip it off just to give me a cleaner tie-in point, like that right there. So just aft of this weight, and then catch this in as many wraps as it takes. And I got a little bump right there, but I think that's not going to be too noticeable after we start wrapping it. So take your thread up here. Now do pay attention to which way you want to spin this to cord it up. So that is how I would normally twist it to cord up yarn or thread. So this is actually reverse wound. So I'm going to have to spin it counterclockwise to cord it up. And you probably do want to cord it up because it's going to be pretty buggy either way. So cord it a little bit and then just start wrapping it up. And maybe every couple of wraps or so, you're gonna have to tighten it up just a little bit more. But go ahead and do this, take it all the way up to the front of the hook. Okay, after you get it up the front, let's get a couple tight wraps here to catch this off. 2 or 3, I guess. Now we can snip this. And the recipe does say well picked out burlap. So that's pretty well picked out right there, but you might want to take your toothbrush or bodkin and just, pull a little bit more of it out. And you might be tempted to trim some of that off, but I'd say don't do it. I'd say leave what you got. Let's put a few extra wraps right here just to make it easier to, lay a smoother base where we're going to put this hackle on. And I think that's going to be wide enough to get about 3 or 4 turns of this hackle. And it does call for a grizzly, but I'm doing a variant. I'm doing a grizzly dyed olive. That's why I'm calling this an olive burlap. And I think it looks pretty cool. I've tied these with just standard grizzly soft hackle, and they're fine. They work great. But I want to just do something a little different with this one. So a few extra wraps right there. Let's snip off this stem before we wrap this big feather. And I should probably grab my hackle pliers here, but I've got about 3 inches of feather, so I'm going to try to do it without. And I'm going to get 4 wraps on this thing if it kills me. So that's 2. I want a big, fuzzy, heavily hackled front fly. Is that 4? I forgot to count. I think it is. If not, it's going to be enough. Okay, so let's do a couple wraps here to catch this in. And sometimes when flies like this, before I snip that tip off, I will just go ahead and pull it back and now work on my head. So a few wraps going back here and build this as big a head as you want. And it's a streamer or a big steelhead fly, so don't be afraid to put a big head on it if you want. Okay, that's big enough. Pretty cool looking with that tip hanging back there, but we're going to get rid of that. So just try to pull it in here and snip just the stem. And there we go. Got a couple of those that I might want to pluck out that aren't really laying back like I want. But we've got enough room here for a decent whip finish. All right, now do we have any cleanup? Yeah, I don't like that fiber right there, so I'm gonna see if I can pluck that out. It came out just fine. But there we go, an olive burlap. So pretty fun pattern to tie, not really hard. I appreciate you watching, everybody. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.